Oh, hi everyone, and welcome to today's series of webinars, of which there are four. We've got a couple of Forex ones. This is the first, and then after the two Forex, we've got two more where we're going to be looking at the markets in general, but in particular the stock market and obviously the indices and possibly some commodities as well. However, this is Forex, but before we start, as you know, trading can be a very risky business. So please don't ever think of using money that you cannot afford to lose. Now, as always, we're going to be looking at the technical picture for the charts for the currencies through the prism of what we call volume price analysis, but we'll also use our quantum trading tools that David and I have been developing over a number of years. I know we've got some of our users here today, so welcome, obviously, and some of our students, and I know some of you perhaps have never come across the volume price analysis or the quantum tools, and I'll bring up a link to Amazon later on, or perhaps David will, just to give you a heads up of where you can find explanations of the concepts on Amazon in the various books that are up there. Right, but we really have to sort of get a bit of a motor on today, because these sessions, we've made them a little bit shorter, sort of make them a bit more punchy, as it were. But obviously today is a very important day. We have a quick look at the calendar, but you don't need me to tell you that everyone is focused on the FOMC. But I'd like to take a step back, because at 3:30 we also have an interest rate decisions from the Bank of Canada. The Bank of Canada, the Canadian, the loonie, is one of these. It's a bit like Canadians in the nicest possible way. They're a bit sort of self-effacing, and it's a bit of a self-effacing currency, but oftentimes the currency can really deliver some fantastic trades, some fantastic trading opportunities, and it tends to get, because of the BOC their fundamental news kind of comes on the same day that the Fed news. It kind of tends to be a little bit overlooked, which is a shame, because as I said, the Canadian, it's a hugely important currency. Both, it's obviously a commodity currency along with Aussie and New Zealand, so it can tell you a lot about sentiment, but also more importantly, it's an energy currency, and it's to do with oil and gas, etc. So a really important currency. So as I said, it's one, obviously the dollar CAD, most traders know that, but you can find some, as I said, some really good trading opportunities with the Canadian, and oftentimes not only in the dollar CAD, but in the cross pairs. And those of you who have the program, I think David and I actually did a video, sort of webinar on it, where before an important piece of news for the Canadian, oftentimes it's not back tested. I'm not talking about it. This is observational. You will find that in the period leading up to the news, sometimes starting in Asia, but certainly in the London and Europe session, you can find some very good moves. And today we have had that in particular, and it's also been helped by the fact that market sentiment has improved markedly, and we just have a quick flick through over at investing.com, and we can see the Dow futures are up 315, and I think the Nasdaq is also up. Let's just have a look. That's up 326. Maybe they know something that we don't know, what the Fed is going to say. The consensus is there isn't going to be a rise in interest rates this time around. The first one is projected for March, but all sorts of, who knows? We'll have to wait and see. It's interesting that China is kind of going in the opposite direction. So it's all very, it's even more uncertain than it usually is. So with that in mind, the reason I'm doing this little roundup on the Canadians is because one of the questions that intraday traders ask is, well, there is this important piece of news. Well, what do I do? Do I just step back and stay away from the market and wait till the news is is released, and perhaps find an opportunity, either what they call a fade if there's a reversal? And there is, first of all, there's no right or wrong answer. All I would say with the Canadian is, as I said, having observed it for a number of years now, you can very, very often, as I said, in this, if you are trading the London and European session, go and have a look at it. It does tend to move, and it will get to some kind of overbought or oversold position. You then get the news. It will then, obviously, you get the knee-jerk reaction depending on the significance of the news, and it will then either carry on happily in its own way, or it will reverse. Now, the other thing to bear in mind about the Canadian is that if you read around what the BOC are planning, they are actually planning to raise the expectation. I think that if interest rates are due to there's going to be an increase today. Now, if that's the case, you would expect a currency to strengthen, because then you get into the differential between the interest rates. So, as interest rates go up, the currency becomes more attractive from an investment perspective. Currencies are also assets, are held as assets as well. So having a look at what happened this morning, we can see here that this is the rise in the Canadian. We've got a rise in the Aussie now. Kiwi kind of rose, but it's curled over. It hasn't really got the momentum that of these two commodity currencies. They do tend to move, as a trio, as it were. But sometimes, not always, as it were. The yen has been selling off quite strongly, reflecting what we can see in the indices. The euro has also been selling off. But what's nice at the moment, as we wait for the Wall Street Open, is we have some really nice divergence on the currency strength indicator. This is really, we call it a strength indicator because it tells us whether a currency is strong or weak, as it were. But in a way, it's much more of a flow indicator because it's telling us where the money is going into. And this morning, as I said, it was going very much into the commodity currencies. There was a little bit going into the pound. The dollar really not doing very much, as we can see here. In fact, the index that we can see over here, we had this big up candle. We had a sequence of calendars which almost made it look like a little flag pattern. And I think I wrote on my Facebook page, I said, yeah, that's interesting, but where's it going to go to? It's going to go to the volume point of control, which is exactly where it has a kind of stored, and we've also got the fourth Camarilla pivot point there. But can I just draw your attention over here to the matrix? Because what the matrix does, it takes the data from the individual flows into the currency, sort of pairs it up into the pairs and tells us which are strong and which are the strongest pairs, which pairs are being bought, which pairs are being sold. Now, the values we have at the moment aren't really terribly impressive, which is not surprising because, as I said, we've got the BOC rate decision coming up, and we've also got the Fed coming up. And I know it's a few hours to the Fed, and we've still got the Wall Street Open to look forward to. When you've got the kind of days, the activity, it will tend to quieten down. Now, what I did this morning to give an explanation, a little bit more of an explanation, is I took a screenshot of my Euro Canadian profile, as we can see here, and the move in the Euro Canadian, excuse me while I take a drink here, actually started, if we look at the hourly chart, actually started really back in Asia. It was actually a break from the volume point of control down to the third pivot point and further down. Now, when you're faced with a situation like I was this morning on the Euro Canadian, and we can see the values that were here this morning. This was, I think, about 10 o'clock or so. Just hold on a second, please. Hold on. Sorry about that. We're faced with a situation like this where there has been a strong move. And, you know, you as an intraday trader, you think, oh, that's great. You know, the question, the next question is, well, is there an opportunity either to join this, what's clearly now a primary trend lower? We've got a big down candle on the daily chart, very much against the flow from the previous 2 days, where we've got deep wicks to the bottom of the candles, where there has been quite strong euro buying. But no, it's you know, today is the day for selling the euro or buying the Canadian. The question you always need to ask yourself, well, I see this primary trend lower. What am I going to do? Do I wait for a potential reversal, or is this actually going to go lower? Now, that kind of conversation, you could say, okay, you've got the whole day to decide one way or another. Look at the indicators. What are they telling you? What is the matrix telling you? At the time I took the screenshot, the Canadian was the strong, you know, probably the strongest currency of all of them. There was big flows going into the Canadian. We can see here against the Swiss franc, against the Japanese yen. That is a reflection of sentiment, and I think oil is looking quite sort of perky at the moment. And if you can see here, this was the euro Canadian, and we know there are good moves because of the values that we can see on the matrix compared to the values that we see at the moment. But as I said, the question is this, right? We've missed this bit because obviously I wasn't here. I was still asleep, and then it gets to the S3 and it has continued lower, and you think, oh, great, well, you know, where is it going to go? What is going to happen next? And another way of deciding whether you think there is there's enough left in this new move that could possibly make it a viable trading opportunity, is actually, yes, you know, look for those reversals, look for those pullbacks, look for those secondary trends, and using volume price analysis to determine whether it's just a pullback or is it the start of a deeper correction. But there is another way of doing it, and that is to look at what is ahead, what is, you know, what is pointing ahead. Is there a significant level coming up to which this pair could possibly travel, or has it actually reached a point that, you know, this is it, it's done for the, you know, this move is done in for the euro Canadian, not necessarily for the Canadian nor for the euro, because we have this thing called rotation. So whilst there has been heavy selling of the euro, you know, against the Canadian, and resulting in this really nice deep divergence, we've got this sort of equal, if you like, equal pressure on both sides, which gives us these kind of nice, deep, strong trends, which is what we want to see. And we can see that reflected also on the Renko chart. And we know this is a dream trend. Why is it a dream trend? Because it came off a congestion phase, a consolidation phase. It moved lower. You know, you can see the shallow pullbacks, obviously, but yeah, the Renko bricks may have changed. We did get a bit of a change in the trend dot, but the trend monitors has stayed relentlessly red, which is what we want. So what's next? As I said, given all this, and we can see that, you know, there is still buying of the Canadian and there is still selling of the euro, but this particular pair has come to a pause point on multiple time frames. First of all, on the hourly chart, we're actually at a volume support that we can see here. But more importantly, on the faster time frames and the Renko, this is the 5-minute chart, this is Renko, we're actually at the outermost pivot, the Camarilla pivot, which is the 6th level. And oftentimes, this is where you will get I wouldn't say a hard stop. You will certainly get a pause point and a congestion phase. But I just wanted to show this to you to give you the context of what we are looking at the moment. And I'm not going to look at it now, but also the other pair that I had this morning was in fact the pound yen. And we can see here the pound really wasn't doing very much, but the yen was being sold quite strongly. The pound yen was still moving, but it was because it was only being driven on one side. The Canadian yen was actually moving much more strongly. So let's go and have a look and see what the Euro Canadian is actually doing. Or as we say, I'm going to stick to MT4. I've actually got it on my Ninja Trader, but let me stick to my MT4 platform. Where are we at the moment? To actually see what happened, because in fact, let's have a look. Let's bring it right up to date on the thing. Right, here we are. This is where we left it. We left it coming down the down candles. We left it, as we see here, on the 6th pivot point. It didn't, it consolidated for a little while, and then it actually did break a little bit lower, but it didn't go very far. It actually stopped at, there's another volume, in fact it stopped at the volume support that we saw here earlier on the hourly chart. So this is looking not more as a continuation, but as a reversal. Now, looking on the hourly chart, when I said, perhaps what is the possibility, rather than, just looking at the pullbacks on the faster time frames for potential entries, you also need to see whether it is actually worth your time. Has it got more to run? And look, this is where your levels come in. This is the S4 pivot on the Camarilla, but it didn't get there because, as I said, on the faster time frames and on the Renko, we had, where is it, the S6, giving that initial support. And in fact, what's happened since is we've now also got the volume point of control, and it's kind of put in this, this double bottom, and we're now looking for a potential reversal. But moving, one other point I just want to bring up on the hourly chart is when you look at the volume bars that happen in time zones where there is not a lot of participation, where there is the market isn't quite as active because there are few traders. People will say, well, is it valid? And the answer is yes, because it's relative and it's in context, but you're always going to see above average volume in the more liquid trading sessions, such as Europe, London, and now of course we're coming up to the North American session. And by the way, once North American session opens, that's obviously Canada and the US. The Canadian, there'll be even more flows going into Canada because it's a local currency, and it's obviously going to be affected by what is happening, with news and what have you. But the way you can look at this is look at the shape and the pattern of what these volume bars are doing. So this is a congestion phase, and just read them relative to the candles that they are associated with. So are you seeing any opportunity, in the down candles? Are you seeing rising volume? Are you seeing is volume very flat, which is probably what you would expect? Where is it? It's trading around the volume point of control. It's waiting for, as I said here, what is it here? It's 5. It's towards the end of Asia. Euro Canadian doesn't tend to be, a favoured pair in that particular time zone, but we are at the volume point of control. We do start to get the break. What we want to see is the breakaway, not a lot of volume on any up candle, and this is what we want to see. We want to see this pattern of volume rising as the price falls. It then kind of flattens off a little bit, and you read this in in conjunction with the support and resistance levels that that are up ahead, as it were, and that's based on price-based support and resistance, and also volume-based support and resistance. And price-based, you're looking at the on here, you're looking at the dynamic SNR indicator, where you have a solid line which is stronger, or you have a hatch line which is, you know, slightly weaker, and also you have the volume support and resistance, which is derived from the volume point of control. So it's having seen a strong move. When you come maybe you know, later on in the London session, something has happened. You know, do you want to join the move, or is this actually going to be a reversal? The key is to look ahead. If this were to, ask yourself the question, if this were to continue, where is it going to go? Where is it going to find a base? That's when you go to your other time frames, go down to the faster ones, as I said here, and the Renko chart. Is there anything in that on that chart which tells you that this is where you're going to have a, as I said, if not a full stop, but at least a pause? And do remember, with support and resistance levels, you have to be flexible with them. They are within a, you have to give them tolerance. So yes, this is, you know, by all means is this is the S6. It's the sixth pivot point. You know, sometimes it goes straight through, but it needs momentum. It will pause. What happens next? Does it carry on? Does it carry? You know, you just have to be a little bit patient. But by looking at the 5-minute chart, you can, you know, really look at the up candles, look at the down candles. You know, is the volume in the candle, the range of the candle, does it, you know, is it an anomaly, or, you know, does it look what it should look like? Is it in agreement, as it were? But the important thing is, are you seeing wicks to the bottom of the candles? Are you seeing efforts to rise, efforts to rise, efforts to rise? You know, and this little combination of candles here is actually quite interesting, because you say, oh great, I'm seeing rising volume and falling prices. But what you're also seeing is, you're seeing narrowing of spreads, and you're seeing wicks, and then you're seeing this candle, which is a very narrow spread candle with really a lot of volume. And that is telling you that compression of price with that amount of volume is saying, haha, because if this was all selling, first of all, it would, you know, that candle range would be much wider. It isn't. So possibly after how many tests of this support, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, you know, there's enough selling, there's enough buying coming in to actually start to reverse this high, and it's actually turning into a very, very nice reversal trade. You can see here on the Renko, this is the first effort to rise here. This is the bit of those 4 candles that I pointed out, and you think, oh, okay, fine. But by looking at the volume profile of those underneath those candles is enough to tell you that, in fact, the selling is exhausted. There is actually enough, you know, buying now coming in to push this higher. But we have to be aware that we do have the BOC coming in. Now, whether that's going to reverse, we don't know. We just have to wait. Right. I've done on that one. Do you want to have quickly come in, David, and then we'll close off? Right. Well, that's the. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop the webinar. There's the next one. So if you want to join us for the rest of the session, you will have your link. Just join us there, and we'll keep an eye on this. And I think actually we will be going right through to the BOAC, and we will see what happens.